we started with our customer. We had general contractors and the commercial construction projects in Central Texas. What's their goal? It might sound oversimplified, but the goal is to make money. Okay, how does our customer make money? Well, they've got to deliver the full scope of their project on time and under budget. Again, sounds oversimplified, but to us, it's kind of revolutionary.
Hey everyone, thanks again for listening to another episode of The Future of Construction. Today I'm speaking with Francis Hester, the CEO of Captain Hook Dumpster Rentals. Francis, thanks so much for joining me today.
Thank you very much for having me.
Of course. I would first love to know how you came to be in the dumpster rental business. What did it look like from kind of early stages of, coming out of whether it be university or college or wherever you went, into your entrepreneurial journey that you ultimately landed in?
So I was living in Chicago with my wife and our first child, and my wife was getting her master's in Montessori certification, and we had planned to move. We didn't know where, we didn't know what we were doing, but we were going to move out of Chicago when she was done with that program. So I looked in the Austin Statesman, and there was a fellow advertising for an office manager at Captain Hook in Austin. And I don't remember if it was the way that he wrote it or the words that I read, but somewhere in there I thought, no, this guy wants out. He wants out and I want in. I'd been on a garbage truck for the better part of a decade between Pittsburgh and Chicago, and I wasn't satisfied, I wasn't fulfilled. So I wanted to do something entrepreneurial or at least get into management somehow. So I reached out to him, and sure enough, he said, yeah, I don't have anybody to leave this thing to. I'm getting too old for this. So we just started talking. I was in Chicago. I flew down a couple times to see the operation, and I moved down here in July 1st of 2011, and we started working together, mostly butting heads. An older person and a younger person, right? The older person is very risk averse and doesn't want to grow or expand. I wanted to take the world by storm. So we mostly butted heads for 4 years, and I learned quite a bit in that time. And then he retired to Wisconsin. We transacted in 2015.
Did you know at the time that you're going to take over the business?
I assumed.
Yeah.
When we started talking, that assumption was validated. He said, yeah, I don't plan on doing this forever. I was given a little bit of equity right off the bat just to, lock me in, so to speak, I'm sure, from his perspective. But yeah, it was the assumption very early on that I'd eventually take over.
And what was that transition like? Like, you go from being in an organization where, yes, you probably have a lot of control over how it's shifting and changing, or some, right? You have this person who's constantly butting heads with you. But then you move into being the person who runs the whole thing.
It was pretty good. It was pretty smooth for 4 years. I think he gave me quite a bit of latitude. We did fight around several points all the way until the day we transacted. Whether or not we needed professional bookkeeping services, I insisted that we needed to have a good, clean set of books, because how else are we going to know where we're at? Bringing in software. There's nothing wrong with the, system as we have it. And I'm like, well, how sometimes we miss a customer's request. Some of this stuff can get tightened up. So we fought about that kind of stuff for a long time. And once he did retire and I was able to make those decisions, it was a pretty good feeling. It's a pretty good feeling.
And so you step in day one, you're the big boss.
And then I had the joke that I would tell everybody, say, what do you do? And I say, well, I'm IT. And they would say, oh, you work with computers? I say, no, I'm it. Right? I got to do the marketing, the sales, it was a very small company.
Heck yeah.
Marketing, the sales, the operations. So there's nobody but me, which was neat because at the same time I was going to Concordia here for a business degree. And I got into some entrepreneurial communities. I did EO Accelerator for a couple of years. Having those people around who were either going through the same thing or who had been through the same thing to offer their support, guidance, things like that, insights was extremely helpful. But the education part was book learning,
Hmm.
in the evenings, but then direct practical application every single day.
So I think what's interesting is, and I have found this too in my journey, is I couldn't imagine going to school
Mm.
and going and getting an MBA, for example,
Mhm.
and learning half as much as what I've learned here.
Oh, there's no way. There's
Like,
no way.
you're steeped in the shit and
Right.
the greatness
Right.
of that's constantly keeping you up at night, pushing you forward, giving you the anxiety of your lifetime.
Right.
Right?
Absolutely. The one thing that I did take, I would say probably the only thing that I took from my business education formally, was that it demystified everything. Remember, I was coming off of a garbage truck. I didn't know what I didn't know. I still don't know quite, I still don't know enough, but I didn't know anything. So to be able to go through sort of all the aspects of business, HR, accounting, managerial accounting, strategy, all it did was sort of demystify. It was like, oh, okay, I can do that,
This
and
is
now I know
how all the pieces.
here's all the pieces that fit. And
Yeah.
here's, if you've never heard of, just whatever aspect it is, HR, for example, compliance,
Hmm.
things like that. If you've never heard of it, the education that it just showed that it was like, oh, this is not anything I can't do.
Hmm.
Now I know what I don't know. Okay, so now I know where to go look and find out how to do this if those, or once those problems arise.
So how did you go from? I would assume you said driving a dumpster truck. That's where you kind of started this.
So I started on a step
Okay.
in Pittsburgh,
Okay.
and they had a
And
program.
tell us, what is a step? I'm not familiar.
Right on the back of the garbage truck.
Okay, got it.
There's a little step for the helper,
Okay.
right? And you ride on the step, and the driver pulls up, and you get off and put the stuff in the back and hop back up on the step.
Okay. So you started on a step.
Started on the step and worked my way up to driver. They had a program where they would pay for your license, your school to get a license. So I got my license there, and then I learned to drive in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, which is all bridges, tunnels, and hills, and
Oh.
snow and ice.
Hey, hello.
Yeah.
I'm from Canada. That's
Exactly.
same world.
So-
Yeah.
Figuring out how to drive a commercial truck up there. We started with 5-speed Mac. If you don't hit the gears just right on the hills,
Yeah.
everybody behind you hates you.
What is this kind of thing that compels you to be like, I can do this? Because I had the opportunity to start my career early in an environment where you basically were surrounded by other entrepreneurs in the making. And so you saw it very clearly. There were the people who I knew were going to jump and do their own thing. And there were the people who are going to be lifers and still pushing the boundaries, but within an organization. And so, what was it within you that you found this kind of, I don't know, this willingness to take on a business? Because I feel like that's not for everyone. Where's that confidence, or what was that thing telling you to do it?
Ignorance,
say the same.
arrogance. Who the hell am I? Even when I was in the Marine Corps, when I was at Waste Management in Pittsburgh, when I worked at Groot in Chicago, every place that I went, I was just not fulfilled, mostly around not being able to affect change. But even if I wasn't going to be able to affect change, knowing why, or being given the context for why can't we improve this? I see so clearly that we could be doing this better, that we could be avoiding these obstacles. I got upset customers. I know why they're upset. Here are the resources I need to make that happen. Here's how we can change things to make this a better, and just not being given any solution or any reasoning why it couldn't be done. So many people just follow the status quo, and it drives me bonkers. So I thought, if these guys can run a business and not care, of course I could do something if I'm dedicated to actually solving problems.
Which I love, because then this starts a journey for you that is full of ups and downs and turnarounds, and you learn quite a bit over the course of the following, I guess, that would be 2011 you took over?
2011, we got to Austin, and I started to run it, and then 2015. So yeah, 13 years of running it.
So I want to get to, and I know that there's an area that we'll talk about, which is kind of where we are now and the value of what you guys bring and your differentiators. But I'd love to understand before we get there, just those blunders. Like, walk me through kind of the evolution of the last 13 years and what were some of the more kind of pivotal moments where you're like, I had to learn that one the hard way.
Oh, wow. How do you start? That's a big list, Chloe. That's a lot of stuff. It's a lot of ground to cover. I would say, honestly, starting from now, working backward is probably better because I'm not going to remember all the mistakes that I made. Only last year did I sort of figure out what our system is. I tortured everybody in my life and myself with this question for over a decade. What is one unit of production? What's one unit of production for our system, for our company? Is it a dumpster dropped off? Is it a dumpster dropped off and then picked up? Is it a day of that equipment being on site? Is it 1 ton dumped? I have to know what one unit of production is so that I can understand what our capacity is. If I don't understand what our capacity is, I have no idea whether or not we're full of capacity, whether we have more capacity to give, so I couldn't make decisions to improve the system if I didn't understand what the system was. And now I want to be very careful about how we talk about this because there is some stuff that we figured out that I think that gives us a competitive advantage, which is understanding what our capacity is. But I don't want to just
all good
put that out there.
Keep the secret sauce to yourself. Yeah.
But what we figured out last summer was a very good offer for our primary customers who are general contractors in commercial construction in the Central Texas market. And the validation is in the team. Before late last summer, like where we're at now, last year, before, at any point, if you were to look into our organization, it was chaos, firefighting, conflicting priorities, vacillation between, do this, no, do that. And you're talking in a matter of days. And so the effect obviously on people is
overwhelming.
It's overwhelming. It's uncomfortable.
Yeah, we don't like change.
But people want to win. They want to succeed. But in order to succeed, you have to know how to win and how to succeed. What am I doing? How can I do my job, whatever my role is, in the most effective and efficient way? So we didn't have the appropriate context of the system to look at. We developed last summer. As soon as we said, oh, these numbers used to be important, but this is actually what we need to focus on. The entire system calmed down. Everybody calmed down. Everybody was able to point to me when I got looking at something, distracted.
Shiny object.
When I get distracted, say, no. Remember, this is important. That used to be important. This is important. And I go, you're right. Like, damn, but everybody was sort of a collective sigh of relief. And since late last summer, we haven't been vacillating between, now discounts, now increased price, definitely want to get this on the schedule. No, we don't have enough capacity, but we have to. All that went away. So that was.
So did this ladder up?
Validating.
And I'm just going to check my notes here, but did this ladder up to fast delivery and the fact that you guys are now like within 24 hours you can deliver?
So our marketing hasn't caught up yet.
Okay.
But what we realized for our customer who is in a project environment, we started with our customer. We had general contractors and commercial construction projects in Central Texas. What's their goal? It might sound oversimplified, but the goal is to make money. Okay, how does our customer make money? Well, they've got to deliver the full scope of their project on time and under budget. Again, sounds oversimplified, but to us, it's kind of revolutionary. We're looking at it from the lens of our customer now. So they're in a project environment. Their goal is to make money. Okay, how well does our industry actually support them in delivering the full scope of their projects on time and under budget? What we realized was my industry does not do a very good job. at all.
How did you know that?
How did I know that we don't do a very good job?
Yeah, did you canvas? Did you talk to other folks? How did you find that out?
Many of us operate the exact same. There's not a lot of differentiation. Chloe, put your stuff in my metal box instead of their metal box.
Got it.
But because we all, making an assumption here, but I think it's fair to make, none of us really know what our system is, how to perform in a reliable and consistent way for our customer. Everybody's performance is terrible, to be frank. I mean, we perform sometimes well, but oftentimes we get over our skis, and so lead time gets kind of pushed out, and now you're deciding who to service and who not to service. We all operate about the same. And another clue is price, right? What's the best price you can give me? The assumption built into that is that everybody's the same.
And I have to do this transaction, and there's no additional value I could get.
That's right. Got to do the transaction. Everybody's going to be the exact same. Everybody's performance is the exact same. The only thing you're left with is price.
Yeah.
And so it's also very difficult to sort of innovate. Okay, how do we bring value? We're bringing a big metal box to put garbage in, and then we're removing a big metal box with garbage in. Where's the
interest?
Where's the excitement? Where's this, where's the thing that we could do? Well, it turns out reliability is crucial. It's crucial to our customers who are in a project environment that have to drive these projects to completion as near the due date as they can get it and maintain whatever estimates or budgets that they set from the beginning. So what we were able to do with that understanding was we were able to figure out how to deliver consistent, reliable performance. So what we offer now is a next day guarantee. If we're not there by the end of the next business day, we discount 25% for every day that we're late.
It's meaningful.
And we track it. And this year we've got a 98.23, I think, percent on-time completion rate. And we count all misses. If we show up and the gate is locked, if we show up and there's vehicles parked in the way and we can't service it, we still count that as a miss. Even in spite of counting all of that, we still have a 98% reliability rating, which is why we're able to put the guarantee behind it and say, and therefore, right? If everybody's going to say we have great service, what we're saying is we have great service. And if we don't, we're going to pay for it. We're going to give you some kind of remedy for that.
So interesting to me that you, after so many years in industry, have now kind of come to this concept of a unit, and as a result, been able to better forecast capacity of your business. And then from there, you go into how do we innovate on the thing that everyone looks at us for, which is pricing. And like you said, we're a metal box. You put your junk in my metal box or someone else's. And now you take a different approach of how do you build intrinsic value into that relationship. What does that tell you about like where we're headed in terms of an industry, in terms of the construction industry and taking a different lens and thinking about the customer and not just about your own bottom line? Like, are you seeing that shift happen elsewhere? Is that a shift that's a next level shift, I guess?
I would definitely say it's a next level shift. Like our ability to actually reason through and be innovative by starting with our customer's goal in mind. When we commit to a project, what we're committing to is on-demand service. Meaning when you call to get service, we need to perform pretty much as soon as we possibly can, which requires an intimate understanding of what your capacity is, because guess when people call? All at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
Like we're on 160 jobs concurrently. Either nobody's calling or everybody's calling, right? So when everybody calls, we still have to have enough capacity to be able to respond in a reliable and predictable way for our customers.
Mm-hmm.
But if we don't put our customer's goal as the problem that we're trying to solve, and we just say, hey, these guys need dumpster service, we could provide it. How can we make the most money we possibly can out of this? You come up with a lot different solutions for that. Different ways of prioritizing customer. Well, Chloe's a big customer. We'll take care of her today. And some other folks are not that great. They're not as big. They don't give us as much revenue. So we'll wait. They can wait a couple days. I would definitely say it's next level to reason through it that way.
It's interesting because we watch this happen a lot at Mercator with customers that start to recognize that having a data strategy is effectively how you apply a lens to the data.
Mm-hmm.
Data inherently, just like, a roster of customers or a bunch of calls coming in, doesn't inherently have a perspective.
Right.
It's the perspective that you apply on it, which is the differentiator. And that's still like the human component. A lot of people get scared around AI, right? But there's still that human component of like, okay, what lens are we going to apply here? And it's fascinating to me that through your company's experience, now that you guys have a lens and a real target, which ladders up to your customer, you have a very clear objective in front of you that everyone understands.
Mm-hmm.
And that organizational clarity, all of a sudden your organization goes whoop, and everyone's running in the right direction or in the same direction.
Yep.
It becomes powerful. Now you have a tidal wave of people focused on the same objective.
Everybody's rowing the same direction at the same rate.
Totally.
Yeah. And again, you can see it in the people as well. Like, that's the thing that I realized in this sort of last year of leading this business is that my primary role is to provide what you're calling a lens, what I would say context, giving the appropriate context within which people understand what their part of the whole is, and therefore can make those decisions autonomously without trying to clear things or check it. Is it okay can we do this? Can we, but it also enables or encourages collaboration, right? If we have the appropriate context and we realize that we're a part of a whole, what that means is I realize that my outputs are the inputs of another subsystem within this organization.
Mm-hmm.
And so they kind of become my customer, right? And I've got to collaborate with them to make sure that they're getting their deliverables on time and at a high enough quality that they can produce their outputs and so on and so forth. But that context or the lens is, I think, the most important thing, but from a human perspective, like that gives everybody the good feeling about coming to work. Hey, I accomplished today. Why? Because these and these issues came up and I was able to respond to them in a way without looking over my shoulder or knowing whether I was doing the right thing. I was able to respond to them because I know the context of this and how to feed the other, collaborate with everyone else.
Totally. Do you find yourself, have you always been an early adopter? Do you consider yourself an early adopter?
Well, I'd like to think of myself as an early adopter. That sounds so nice. Huh? What's right after early adopter?
Well, I'm curious because it sounds like in an industry.
The early majority?
Oh, yeah, okay.
I'm on the front end of the early majority. I would not consider myself.
Oh, I'm a total laggard, by the way.
Are you?
Oh, yeah. I will fight change tooth and nail until it's mine. Yeah, which is surprising as a tech CEO.
Right? Yeah.
I'm usually at the forefront of
here. Well, now you're leading it, so you'd better get ready. I would love to talk about change too. I don't know if we're going to get to it today, but people say that people are resistant to change. Chloe, I've got a check here for $5 million. Would you say that would change your life?
Probably, yeah.
Would you resist that change?
Probably not.
No way, right? People only resist change when it's not apparent that it's what's best for them. The actual result of whatever is being promised is going to happen. That's when people resist change. Or I'm going to have to do something I don't want to do along with this thing to get the results of whatever the change is promising. But there's best plug, Alan Barnard created something called the Pro-Con Cloud. I highly recommend looking that up. He's a decision scientist. He comes out of the theory of constraints world, but he spent his life helping people to communicate change, helping people to affect change, helping people to move through change in their own life. And his stuff is pretty amazing.
I'll take a look. I have a reco for you as well after this.
Nice.
It's a video that talks about a submarine commander and how he,
Okay.
if you haven't already seen it, it's how he commands his vessel and turns everyone else into a commander. And it's
Very cool.
It's an ethos that we bring to our company, which you talked about, actually, about making sure that everyone has the organizational clarity and the intent, skill set to be able to act on their own behalf, on behalf of the company.
Right.
And it's massively changed how we operate as a team. And it's...
Do you see it in the people?
Oh, I see it. I see it in every decision that's
empowered?
being made. Yeah.
That's awesome.
Which is exciting.
It is.
Because you then see people who feel like they actually have, and to your point about just having the understanding of the greater organization so that when you make a decision, you understand what it ladders up to and whose input you take in and whose output you're giving to, or who's receiving your output. The team operates like a well-oiled, I don't want to say machine because they're not a machine. They're not machine parts.
No,
they're people.
but the organization is the system, and the system is made up of people and our activities. You're not saying the people are machines, but it is a system. It's a system that's made up of subsystems. There's inputs, there's outputs, there's transformative processes in the middle. If people lack that clarity, here's the best example I could give that I see often and live through, and kind of gets into the technology aspect of it. Let's introduce a technology that will make the sales team more efficient. Will this result in a net improvement for the organization as a whole? What if I told you that currently in that organization, operations is already struggling to handle, to keep up with the outputs of the sales team today? Either they're overscheduling their capacity, or they're creating scheduling conflicts, or they're double booking critical resources. In that instance, making the sales team more efficient would actually exacerbate the existing problem, which is at the interface between sales and operations. That's where the improvement, if you're going to improve this system, needs to happen before we bring in a piece of technology that increases the efficiency of the sales team. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and I wanna put a pin in that for a second and come back to it, because I don't want to gloss over the fact that change in an industry like construction is incredibly painful.
Yes.
And in order to even be able to have that conversation, understanding why that change is so painful in an industry like this, or maybe it's not, maybe I'm calling it painful, but I would say that the just adoption of change, I've noticed, is met with a lot more pushback. And I'd be curious from your perspective, being in industry, where is that coming from? And then those conversations can then build upon or build towards how we actually change our operations or think about how we work together.
Specifically in the construction industry, I think there's a tremendous depth of experience and of institutional knowledge, right? The way things are done today are not too unlike the way that they've always been done. So here's how the pro-con cloud works.
Yeah, let's do it.
There's change versus don't change, okay? You have to acknowledge that there are pros and cons on each side, right? There are pros, there are positives to not changing. It's worked like this, for the last 75 years. We're still profitable. We're still safe. There's also cons to not changing, which are, okay, there's a lot of technology that is coming in really fast. None of us can digest it all, right? Or even understand the world that we're moving into with quantum computing, with artificial intelligence, with and all the things that those bring, improved materials, improved tools, improved processes. If we don't change, right, all that's going to catch up with us. So the story is, Chloe is at the base of a mountain. And I'm pointing to the top of the mountain. I'm saying, hey, see that pot of gold at the top of the mountain? That represents all the benefits of change.
Mm.
And Chloe says, yeah, but I got to get up the mountain, right? What if I fall? What if I hurt myself?
Mm-hmm.
So there's a pot of gold and there's a pair of crutches, okay? That represents the negatives, the downside, the risk, the effort of changing.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a lagoon and there's a beautiful mermaid there and it's Chloe's best friend. And Chloe doesn't want to leave her best friend, right? She wants to stay with her best friend. That represents the pros of not changing, of remaining at the base of the mountain.
Mm-hmm.
Also in that lagoon, there are great big alligators, and the alligators are coming to munch on you if you don't get out of there.
Mm-hmm.
Once you lay out all of the pros and all of the cons, that's the story to help you remember it, there are a number of solutions that you can explore. If I change, I don't have to worry about the negatives of not changing. That's gone.
Mm-hmm.
But I have to address the risks, the effort inherent in making this change and minimize those to the best of my ability. And I would love if I could bring over some of the positives, if it's possible to bring over some of the positives of not changing. Like, I don't want to lose this in this. Like, I have this now.
Mm.
Yes, that looks better, but I really don't want to lose this. One option, one solution is change. The same thing goes for not changing. Is there a way of bringing over the positives of not changing? Is there a way of bringing over the positives of changing? I don't have to worry about the risks inherent in changing if I'm not going to change, right?
Mm-hmm.
Is there any way I can bring over and how do I address these problems that are coming up? The longer I stay in this position, is there a way of minimizing that? So you've got two solutions so far. You can change or you cannot change.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
There's another one, though, that says, okay, if I look across these positives, what's the overarching theme here? What is it that I really want to get, ultimately, sort of distilled down? And what's the theme across these cons, these negatives? What's the overarching theme here that I'm trying to avoid?
Mm-hmm.
Maybe I can set a if, then, when, right? Or so long as these conditions are true, I have no reason to change. I'll stay here.
Mm-hmm.
But as soon as this triggering event happens, as soon as this happens, it's time to make a change.
Mm-hmm.
And the last one is, okay, looking at what I'm trying to get most, looking at what I'm trying to avoid, is there something I haven't even considered yet? What's forcing me into this box where I feel like it's a binary decision, right? Is there some other solution? Is there some other thing that I can do that would eliminate this need to make a decision between this specific change or not change that I'm making?
Mm-hmm.
In the construction industry, the mermaid is beautiful, and the alligator is not quite big enough, not quite close enough,
Yeah.
right, to make it obvious that this is the best course of action.
So the people who are hiking the mountain,
Mm-hmm.
what do they see that the people who are hanging out by the alligator, like the lagoon with the mermaids and the alligators, what are they seeing that those aren't?
To them, the alligator is big enough and close enough. Either the pot of gold is big enough, right, to warrant the journey, the adventure, or the crocodiles, the alligators, are big enough or close enough that they see the danger of sticking around, or some combination of both. But also, they've found a way of maintaining some of the positives so they don't feel like they're losing out.
They can still remain in this world.
They still get the benefits of whatever the current condition is. And they've found a way of minimizing the risk or addressing the risk inherent in that journey. So they've done as much as they can. As long as everything's on the table and everything is clear, one could very easily reach the decision like, okay, let's go for this pot of gold. Let's do it. We've addressed everything, and we've even looked forward to say, okay, here's all the potentially negative things that could happen. What will we do if this happens? What will we do if we reach this problem? We've thought through it all. Then it becomes apparent which decision gets you the most of what you want and the least of what you don't want.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And I think maybe what's a challenge in this new world, this new age of data and technology, is that I don't know if we know the list of negatives or the list of positives.
And everything changes so rapidly.
Right.
So, but is that the alligator also?
Or is that the mountain and the lagoon just seems more consistent because it's known?
Right.
It's what I come up across or I come up against.
Give me an example. What do you see?
I mean, from my vantage point, I see folks that are coming up against some huge crocodiles that they think are small crocodiles. But with how quickly technology is growing and building, without being part of the team that's not even, you don't need to be the first set of, of alpinists going up that mountain.
Right.
But you should set off on an expedition. And you should at least start seeing what the climb could look like, because the alligators are only growing and the mountain is only becoming more and more populated. And if you don't start learning how to bring this into your space, companies that may not even exist today are going to be eating your lunch in 5 to 10 years. And if we're looking at companies that grow in that kind of time frame, I talk to companies all the time that are like, our objective is to grow, say, 50% revenue in the next 2 to 3 years. And then in the next 10 years, we want to double. Okay, well, in 10 years, if you want to double, then you better start looking now at how do you start scaling that mountain, because that's where that pot of gold is. That pot of gold is not next to the lagoon.
Right. So are you saying that they don't see the alligators the way you do, or that they don't appreciate?
I guess so. And that's what I'm trying to learn is like...
If you're the one trying to affect change, ultimately what you want is not necessarily to climb the mountain if it is in fact not the best course of action, right? We want the best for anyone who's in our life, whether that's customer, friends, family, you name it, right? Our teams. But it's our responsibility to unfold it in a way that they appreciate the size or magnitude of the alligators, right? We've got to do a good enough job explaining the dangers of things that are coming, and we have to listen and hear when they say, "Yeah, but look, if I do that, right?
What's the risk?
All this, look, I don't have the cash to make this kind of investment. I don't have the resources, right? Most of my day is filled solving problems and putting out fires, in my current organization. Now we're adding, right? So either I've got to staff that, or I've got to replace myself to be able to handle this. If we want to drive change, have to make sure it's a complete picture to help people make the best decision for them. We'd much rather them say, I hear everything you're saying and I see those alligators coming, and you know what?
We don't care.
They can eat me, right? But it's our responsibility. We need to take the responsibility on to present it in such a way that it is clear, that we get somebody else on the same page as where we're at. They also might not appreciate what the pot of gold actually is. And I think I heard you say it. One of the alligators could be you're no longer relevant or have a business, right? And the pot of gold is you can grow at a extraordinary rate if you climb the mountain. It's on us to make the case for all those. But to fill it out, you've got to have a conversation with people and be listening for where each sort of piece goes. And because we might miss something that's very easy, something that they're holding on to, something that people hold on to in not wanting to change, that could be very easily solved. Or some risk that you know how to fix, you know how to mitigate, you know how to downplay.
That they don't.
They don't.
Yeah.
So it's in presenting it sort of in this way that we can help people make change, positive change.
So now you've recently had an experience, and I'm super excited for you to talk about it, where you've already started up this mountain. And let's maybe call it a tech mountain at this point, where you're looking at different software, right? And you're starting to kind of combine and figure out how do you use all of these pieces together. And so talk about, okay, you've gone through the process of, do we stay at the lagoon or we start climbing? And now we're at the stage where we've said, let's start climbing. And we've decided, okay, what does climbing look like? What do we, where do we start? And so tell me a bit about that journey. Tell me a bit about what you've learned trying to even just digitize your company?
So I made many, many, many mistakes.
Bringing up
where
some
tech
PTSD. Yeah.
I made a lot of technological mistakes in the little over a decade that I've led this company. So we're actually in the process of de-teching to a certain extent right now. Bill Gates had a quote about the application of technology in business. Automation applied to an efficient process will magnify its efficiency. And the inverse is also true. Automation applied to an inefficient process will magnify its inefficiency. And I think he was using efficiency synonymously with effectiveness, but there's a difference between efficiency and effectiveness. Russell Ackoff was a professor at Wharton. I'm going to paraphrase. What he said is, there's 5 types of content in the human mind: data, information, knowledge, understanding, and wisdom. And it's a hierarchy. And an ounce of knowledge is worth a pound of data, and an ounce of, understanding is worth a pound of knowledge, and an ounce of wisdom is worth a pound of understanding. Data, information, knowledge, understanding are concerned with efficiency, and wisdom is concerned with effectiveness. And I'm paraphrasing. What he says is there's a difference between the two, and he said that Peter Drucker had the best distinction, made the best distinction between the two by saying there's a difference between doing things right and doing the right thing. We talked about increasing the efficiency of sales when operations is already, the two are disjointed, they're not coordinated, they're not synchronized, and perhaps there's not the ability to increase operational capacity at the moment, right?
Mm-hmm.
Doing the right thing is making sure that we get a full context of what our system is supposed to be outputting, and making sure all the teams within it are facilitating that and synchronized and coordinated. Doing things right would be, hey, we're losing a lot of prospects are slipping through the cracks here. We're losing a lot of opportunity. It appears as though we're leaving money on the table. So let's increase our efficiency. But now you get in a situation where sales team can't hit their numbers because operations team can't perform. Operations team is driven crazy, constantly switching priorities and constant just overload every day. And the customers get less and less in terms of value, on-time deliveries, and quality, right? There's a difference between doing things right and doing the right thing. And that's where wisdom comes in. Are we doing the right thing? Instead of everybody trying to become more and more and more efficient, here's what else he said I loved so much. He said, if you're doing the wrong thing and you find a mistake in the way that you're doing it and you fix that mistake, that improvement makes you more wrong.
Because you're not thinking about it holistically. Because
you need to re-examine the objective before you start to, and I think that's what Bill Gates was saying. Hey, before you start to use technology as a leverage point, make sure that the objective is clearly defined and the right one. Let's make sure that we're structured well and everybody has the context within which to make these kind of decisions. And now let's apply. So in our business, to bring it full circle, I went through a number of different software packages, and the two things that I see that mistakes that I made was first and foremost looking for the right thing in the software. Somebody built this software. They probably built it off of a lot of customer feedback, right? They built this. I'm going to learn something just through implementing this software. I'm going to learn something about my own system and a better way to run it. And I think it happens a lot. And the second thing is efficiency is good no matter what, right? So if we bring in a software and it makes us more efficient, right? If we can do more with less, it's a net positive.
Yes, but without that objective,
it's even worse than that, because if that objective is wrong, and now we're more efficiently pursuing the wrong objective,
yes,
we're getting
dug yourself further.
it's even right. So technology becomes a lever in the wrong way.
Yes.
You're getting farther from being more effective. You're efficient, no doubt, no doubt about it. But your team is in disarray. It's chaos. There's firefighting. Everybody's at each other's necks, and the customers don't get value. So, and I also think that's why a lot of technology implementations fail, is because the reason we were applying technology in the first place wasn't the right one to begin with.
I see that a lot, by the way.
I think that comes from, if we get this data and we do all these things, right, it's going to transform the way we operate. That's backward. We're operating this way. I need access to this kind of data and this kind of information to give me this kind of knowledge, to give me this understanding, because that will help me do it. How can I get that? Would be the right way.
And I think that needs to be emphasized, because I don't think people think that way.
Right.
I think
I didn't. I haven't. I only started recently.
Fair enough. And I mean, like, as you know, a first-time founder, first-time CEO, I'm still learning that, right? I'm still learning that, okay, we are this today. We want to be this tomorrow, but we've done the work to come up with at least where we want to go and what we want to look like. And then how do we take the technology to support the path to getting there?
Right.
Instead of saying, oh, that looks cool.
That's right.
Let's plug that in.
Or even saying, here's bring in the sales and operations team. If we look at the sales team in an isolated way, again, hey, we're losing prospects. Some of these things our close rate isn't where we want it to be. Right? If we're just looking at the sales piece, what's a technology that could help us improve sales? I made a decision to move from an industry-specific software to Salesforce, because the Chloe that I sold to wasn't the Chloe that I serviced, wasn't the Chloe that I invoiced. So wouldn't it be great if I had one database, one Chloe in my system, so that, I mean, that's an obvious improvement, right? Okay, well, that wasn't our problem to begin with. So we embarked on that transition, and it took 5 years and a tremendous amount of money. And in the end, guess what? It wasn't the right problem to solve. There wasn't a problem with having 3 different Chloes. There wasn't even a problem with those things talking to each other, right? My problem at the time was I didn't know what my capacity was, or whether or not we were full or not. I didn't realize that we were committing to on-demand service. And what that meant is everybody's going to call or nobody's going to call. So when nobody calls, freak out and say, well, we got to do something to get people to call. And when people do call, I said, oh my God, we got to either increase capacity or find some kind of way to handle all this. That was the problem. That was the problem at the time, not having a single database. And so I spent all that time, energy, and attention and effort focused on trying to solve a non-existent problem. My objective was wrong. We got there. I got one Chloe in the system now and everything, and we eventually got a smooth process working out of it. But it didn't grow the company. It didn't give us the level of stability that we have today. So yeah, efficiency, effectiveness. We want to be effective and know that the thing that we're doing is the right thing to be doing, and find ways to plug in the technology to support that.
And not just rely that the technology is coming with a point of view that you...
Technology is going to tell us, right?
Yeah.
Because, look, these people are smart. They've taken a lot of feedback from customers. They know, they obviously know it's going to give us some insight, right, into what we should be doing or a way we should be looking at this. So the next thought I have is, okay, so how do we do the heavy lifting? How do we find the right thing to do before we apply technology strictly to be more efficient? And it's systems thinking.
I was going to ask, how does this make you think now?
It's systems thinking. There's a whole body of knowledge out there called the theory of constraints. Most of it, or at least the foundational pieces of it, were published in Ellie Goldrat's 1984 book, The Goal. Since then, the theory of constraints community has grown to an enormous... Alan Barnard comes out of the theory of constraints community. There's I think Black Belt for Thinking is another resource. But there are a lot of people in the theory of constraints world who help guide folks to learn how to have that holistic approach, how to find the right thing to do, and how to communicate it, right, to the rest of the team, and how to break it into bite-sized enough pieces to like actually understand it. Do the heavy lifting first. Think of it in terms of, here's my system, here's the expected output. What is the expected or what's the current output? If there's something wrong, we got a gap. Now, how do we find where the problem is? Is it that I don't have all these disjointed systems, or is it something much more simple? I don't have a sales team. I have a sales team, but I don't have effective marketing backing them. I have a wonderful sales team. My operations are in disarray. How do we find the actual problem to solve? And that's, I would point to systems thinking to.
Awesome. Well, hey, thank you so much, Francis, for taking the time. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, I had a blast.
If there's any way that our listeners can follow up with you or learn more about Captain Hook, how can they do so?
www.captainhookaustin.com. Our number's on the page. Give us a call anytime.
Perfect. All right. Thanks so much.
Bye.